a Navy T-2 jet in out-of-control flight, downward at 14,000 feet a minute. Experience Navy spin training tonight on Defenseline. This is a Navy F-14 Tomcat jet fighter spinning wildly out of control. The pilot fights the wild gyrations, but the plane has entered a flat spin from which there is no recovery. Seconds later, the $35 million F-14 will crash. From 1970 to 1980, out-of-control F-14s killed 4 naval aviators and destroyed 7 aircraft, costing $245 million. Investigations showed that the F-14's vicious flat spin characteristics had prevented pilots from physically being able to recover the Tomcat. However, in 1980, the Navy formed a special unit on each coast to train pilots to deal with the F-14's treacherous out-of-control flight characteristics before the aircraft became unrecoverable. In the 5 years since then, more than twice as many F-14 hours have been flown, the accident rate has been chopped in half, and no lives have been lost. In 1984 and 85, there were no accidents at all involving out-of-control F-14s. For over a year, one of the 3 elite instructors who daily fly the hazardous spin missions has been this woman, Naval Aviator Lieutenant Linda Schaefer, assigned to VF-43 in Oceana, Virginia. In this exclusive report, the Navy allowed this Defenseline reporter to undergo the wild out-of-control flight training with Lieutenant Schaefer as instructor. The first time that a civilian pilot has ever been allowed to fly through the course. The Special Unit, Adversary Squadron VF-43, has the mission of simulating Soviet aircraft and tactics. The squadron uses a number of different jet aircraft to mimic the performance of various Soviet fighters. Its elite aviators zoom into mock air battles several times daily, using Soviet tactics in order to hone the air combat skills of Navy and Marine Corps fighter and attack pilots. Since 1980, however, VF-43 has had the added job of using these T-2 Buckeye jet trainers to teach naval aviators how to recover from out-of-control flight. This risky and dangerous course of instruction is taught by Lieutenant Schaefer and 2 other instructors, including Program Chief Lieutenant Commander P.J. Fuller.
It's a building process. We show people the early stall phases, then we kick them into departures. We take them into various forms of post-stall gyrations to get them used to it, then into the early phase of a spin, then into the steady state phase of a spin. Then we throw in a few interesting maneuvers to make it all worthwhile.
To make it all worthwhile for the Navy, however, they made sure I was qualified. I was blasted upward in an ejection seat trainer, jerked in a parachute harness and dropped into the water, pulled out of the water by a simulated helicopter rescue hoist, and then I was blindfolded and put into a water crash trainer and dunked several more times to make sure that I was thoroughly drown-proofed. Then I was sky-proofed. With a Navy instructor, I flew some high-G aerobatics, looping and rolling across the Virginia skies. The centrifugal force of the maneuvers made me pull as much as 6 times the normal force of gravity as I flew chase in a T-38 supersonic trainer behind 3 of the squadron's other aircraft, up, over, around, and down in formation. Then a stint at air combat training. During one violent maneuver against 2 F-14s, one of the Tomcat fighters went flashing by at a closing speed of 1,600 miles an hour, less than 300 feet away. An error at that speed would have filled the sky with exploding metal. Then came the hard part, intensive classroom preparation for the out-of-control flight syllabus. VF-43 assigned me their most thorough instructor, Lieutenant Linda Schaefer, the only female spin pilot in the entire United States Navy. Around the squadron, only call signs are used. Lieutenant Schaefer's call sign is Peaches. For days, Peaches drummed the recovery procedures into my head until it became a sort of catechism.
We're going to depart the aircraft, and then F-14 procedures. Neutral lateral, harness lock, program stick forward. As the aircraft recovers, you'll feel it recovering out of that. I want you to pull it out and climb back up to 24,000.
In the classroom, Lieutenant Schaefer, who is determined to become a test pilot, demonstrated her trademark thoroughness. She meticulously detailed every aspect of 10 gut-wrenching, eyeball-squashing, nausea-inducing maneuvers.
So, depart the aircraft again, 24,000. throttle's off, full left rudder, full right stick at 120. And we'll go past the incipience phase, and then the aircraft will be about 30 degrees nose low, steady state yaw, going around the horizon. I'll be talking to you through all of this so you see all the phases, and I'll tell you when to recover. When I ask you to recover, again, look at the turn needle, rudder opposite, stick into.
After a final review of emergency procedures, we headed out to the aircraft. Lieutenant Commander Fuller would fly the chase airplane with Lieutenant Pompier in the front seat shooting videotape. We started our engines and taxied out to the active runway. After receiving clearance, we began a formation takeoff. We headed out to the practice area some 60 miles south over the swamps of Dare County, North Carolina. After some warm-up maneuvers, we began the syllabus. First came the ballistic departure. Fly the airplane straight up and then let her fall. As the jet flopped over, I performed the recovery procedures that Peaches had drummed into me. Neutral lateral stick, harness locked, program stick forward, and pull out of the dive. After increasingly difficult maneuvers with names like accelerated departures, incipient spins, and rudder triples, came the upright spin. Following Peach's calm instructions, I slowed the jet down. As it started to shake just before reaching stall speed, I kicked in hard rudder and opposite aileron. The T-2 flipped around and began to gyrate like a falling leaf. The white trail behind the aircraft was normal. It was fuel being automatically vented to equalize tank pressures. Again, I recovered using the standard F-14 recovery procedures that Lieutenant Schaefer had taught me earlier. Then came the inverted spin. I started a loop. When the aircraft was upside down, I pushed the nose up, waited for the aircraft to stop flying, and pushed in full rudder. Instantly, I was upside down, hanging from the harness in negative G, being pushed towards the canopy. It was hard to reach the stick and rudder pedals. The maneuver is very disorienting, but I remembered Peach's instruction and looked for the turn needle to see which way I was spinning. Then I neutralized the controls and the jet popped upright, but the aircraft was going downhill very fast and started doing recovery rolls. Surprisingly, the mood that Peaches induced was matter of fact. As I recovered, there was even time for banter. The confidence and training provided by the spin instructors is reflected by the fact that in the last 2 years there were no out-of-control crashes of the $35 million F-14s. The total cost of the spin program for 5 years has been about $4.5 million. With the spin instructors of VF-43, this is Chuck Caro reporting. Next, we test drive a Soviet tank on Defenseline. This is a Soviet T-54 tank, but these are not the planes of the Ukraine. Instead, it's the Army's Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland, where the Army maintains a fleet of such vehicles. The unit is the 203rd Military Intelligence Battalion, whose commander, Lieutenant Colonel Mike Peterson, described his unit's mission.
Even though we're a military intelligence battalion, half of my battalion basically has an intelligence mission. The other has a training support mission, which in essence is really a direct and general support maintenance mission for the maintenance and upkeep of the foreign equipment.
The foreign vehicles that the 203rd maintains for training and technical intelligence purposes include Soviet PT-76 amphibious tanks and T-54 and T-55 main battle tanks. Though these are not the very latest in Soviet armor, they represent the great numbers of the types still in the Soviet bloc and Soviet satellite countries. To find out about the strengths and weaknesses of the T-54 series tanks, the battalion's NCOs taught me its gun systems and showed me how to drive it. After stalling it out a couple of times, I drove off with my 32-ton charge to get an idea of what a Soviet tanker would feel. Lessons learned: the T-54 and its more modern sisters are cramped, In fact, most Soviet tankers are under 5'6" because the tank is so small. The tank is not air-conditioned, so combat efficiency on hot days goes down rapidly. The loader in the turret must be left-handed to feed the main gun, a distinct disadvantage. The track systems of these older Soviet tanks are slack. Though this means that they are mechanically more simple, they tend to retard maneuverability. And the fuel tank is located by the second road wheel, offering an anti-tank gunner a vulnerable bullseye. On the other hand, the Soviets have tens of thousands of these and other more modern tanks. Moreover, they are relatively simple to operate compared to sophisticated behemoths like the US M1 Abrams tank. Though the Soviets regularly practice with chemical agents in their field exercises and may have used poison gas operationally in places like Afghanistan, their protective gear is a nightmare of Rube Goldberg devices.
It's a full butyl rubber outfit, so it's very, very hot. Everything they have is made out of rubber, as a matter of fact. Their gloves, their boots come up as far as their waist. So they're wearing this rubber outfit, plus their battle dress uniform, plus another protective undergarment that's like long johns underneath that. And so they're going to be very extremely hot.
Using chemical agents against modern Western forces equipped with far less bulky or clumsy gear might be a mistake for the Soviets. Maintaining all this equipment, especially the tanks and armored vehicles, is a difficult job that requires innovative thinking. Where do you get spare parts for a Soviet BTR-60 armored personnel carrier?
We found that we can have some of the, American engines. Detroit diesel is one of the ones that come right to mind. That'll fit some of the Soviet vehicles.
Next came the firing range, where the 203rd had laid out an impressive array of Soviet infantry weapons.
85 millimeter heat grenade, rocket assist, range is 500 on stationary, 300 on moving.
The first weapon I chose was the new Kalashnikov AK-74 assault rifle now being used in Afghanistan. The AK-74's main advantage is that it fires a 5.45 millimeter round, much like the US M16, and hence the assault rifle is slightly lighter and more accurate than the renowned Kalashnikov AK-47.
Right picture.
Next, I tried the classic AK-47. The rifle is not designed for long-range accuracy or tight shot groups. The Soviets believe in lots of automatic fire, followed by aimed semi-automatic to pick off anyone left standing. I tried several versions of the AK-47, including this Hungarian AMD with a short barrel, folding stock, and forward hand grip. Shooting it from the hip, however, was not the best way to lay down accurate fire. Next came the Soviet PK machine gun. It is based on the AK-47 assault rifle, has a rapid firing rate, is accurate, and is 5 pounds lighter than the comparable US M60. However, it is fed by an 8-foot-long non-disintegrating metal link ammunition belt. This means that a Soviet gunner must run on the battlefield with a long iron tail. A definite disadvantage. The last item was the RPG, or rocket-propelled grenade. My instructor took about 2 minutes to brief me, loaded a round, and pulled the safety pin. I cocked the trigger, aimed, and fired. Bullseye. Out of 6 rounds, 5 were direct hits. It is interesting to note that the RPG costs about $200 a round and takes several minutes to learn how to use. The new US AT-4 anti-tank rocket, however, costs about $1,100 a round and takes several hours of instruction to operate correctly. Despite the apparent technological crudeness of these Soviet tanks and other equipment, sources here at Aberdeen warn against US overconfidence. The newest Soviet equipment, they say, is growing in sophistication, equally rugged and reliable, and available in massive numbers. In a moment, a look at the U.S. Air Force Special Operations Wing on Defenseline. We're aboard an MC-130 combat talent aircraft of the U.S. Air Force's first Special Operations Wing. We're on a mission right now, simulating the penetration of enemy territory at very low altitude. We're only about 150 feet above the terrain. This aircraft is designed to penetrate deep inside an enemy nation to support Special Forces troops operating with guerrilla units. In this exclusive report, Defenseline went on a number of exercises with this heretofore secret unit and saw a wide range of its capabilities. The first, a very low-level penetration of simulated enemy territory, followed by the parachuting of a combat control team into the Gulf of Mexico for a waterborne infiltration mission. The team sergeant leads his flipper-equipped unit out of the combat Talon aircraft, clomping out of the open tail ramp behind their rubber assault boat, an ungainly but apparently effective jump method. Though strung out over a quarter of a mile, the 6 team members swim back to the assault craft, rig their gear and outboard motor, and move out, later picking up this reporter dispatched from another craft.
What we're doing is simulating a beacon placement mission where we will place a beacon near their headquarters so that the fast movers fighter-type aircraft can come in and neutralize the command and control center that they have set up.
The combat control team approaches landfall, and a scouting party goes in to check out the area. The balance of the team follows, stealthily approaching a grove of trees near the target. The radio beacon men move out. When they return, the team quietly departs the area and heads for the boat. Later, another combat Talon demonstrates a rescue. Thundering into a short, barren airstrip, the MC-130 drops down steeply as it would in combat to avoid small arms fire. It smacks down smartly as its pilot applies full reverse thrust and heavy brakes. Turning around rapidly, he lowers the tail ramp. This reporter and an Air Force sergeant simulating rescuees scramble aboard as the pilot, wasting no time, adds full power and begins an assault takeoff. Another rescue method, called the Fulton Recovery System, was demonstrated next. A balloon is launched to an altitude of about 800 feet. Just below it are 2 red flags which indicate the pickup point. In the air, the aircraft commander opens the V-shaped yoke and heads straight for the gap between the red flags. Using precise handling skills, the pilot hits the nylon rope dead on. The balloon bursts as it is designed to, and its tether is hand-grabbed by a crewman leaning out of an open flight deck hatch who ties down the rope for safety. A weighted container simulating a person is pulled straight up and dragged behind the aircraft, flying at 150 miles an hour. Held in by a hydraulic lock at the center of the V-shaped yoke, the rope trails behind the aircraft, where it is snagged and winched aboard. At one point, the rope becomes snagged around the tail, and the pilot shakes his controls until the rope slides free, leaving the crewman to winch in the weighted container. Next came a demonstration of a high-speed airdrop. Because the combat Talon does not have to slow down to parachute equipment, an enemy watching on radar would see no change in airspeed and could not determine the position of the airdrop. With its sophisticated onboard navigation systems, hundreds of pounds of cargo can be delivered at night and in the worst weather to within a couple of hundred yards of the target. The 250-mile-an-hour drop speed gives enemy gunners only a fleeting target. As in Grenada, if a special operations unit gets pinned down or surrounded, this AC-130 has the sensors and guns to deliver massive firepower with surgical precision. Though the AC-130 dates back to Vietnam, it remains a very potent weapon for special operations. Armed with twin Vulcan 20mm guns capable of firing 3,000 rounds per minute each, it also carries a gyro-stabilized 40mm automatic cannon and a huge 105mm howitzer. The AC-130 enters its trademark 30-degree left bank. Flying at 5,000 feet, the pilot calmly lines up the target, a single 55-gallon drum positioned next to a truck. In the aircraft's midsection, operators use high-tech sensors to find targets night and day and in bad weather. Using a laser illuminator, low-light level television zeroes in on the target. So does the infrared sensor, and a device called Black Crow seeks out the running engines of cars and trucks. On the first pass, Spectre lets loose with 20mm high explosive and armor-piercing rounds and 40mm mish-metal fragmentation shells. Though the drum is set afire, he comes around again, and a direct hit sends it up in a fireball. Next, the 105mm howitzer is put into action. The pilot calmly lines up the target in his gun sight and squeezes the firing button. He consistently puts the big white phosphor shells on target. Switching to high explosive warheads, the crew feeds the howitzer as round after round hit the targets 2 miles away. Given the rising tempo of international terrorism and the necessity for the United States to counter it by operating on the very edges of belligerent conflict, it will in all probability be the men of the 1st Special Operations Wing who will air deliver the counterpunch. On the next Defense Line, part 1 of our investigative series about Soviet radio frequency weapons designed to counter U.S. command and control systems. A cruise aboard the USS Taurus, one of the Navy's new high-tech hydrofoil missile ships, and a look at American mercenaries fighting in Nicaragua. I'm Chuck Caro reporting for Defenseline.